Hi, and welcome back to Suspicious Minds, the channel where I, your host, Nini, talk about true crime cases. I talk about unsolved disappearances and just generally creepy stuff. So if that is something that you are interested in, please consider subscribing and also set your notification so that you never miss a video. The case that we're going to look at today is extremely appalling, and it's really something that you cannot go away from unchanged. I remember when this case broke in South Africa. It was in the 90s, and I remember specifically when we heard about the police looking for this person and when his picture finally appeared in the newspapers. I was very shocked to see that this is the person that has been described as a monster. Now that person was Moses Sithole. Now Moses was well spoken, impeccably dressed, had matching manners, and that was his most dangerous weapon because he had an appearance of someone that people can trust. He was a ladies' man, and he was the kind of guy that mothers would say could be marriage material. But in actual fact, Moses Sithole was monster material. I have to state before I start with today's case, the case of Moses Sithole, that I've done quite a lot of research and there are a number of differences in terms of the ages at which certain things happened in Moses's life. So I'm going to go with what the majority of the resources said, and I'm going to tell you the very horrific and sad background story of Moses. But again, Moses had a sad background, but so did all of his siblings, and they didn't turn out to be the monsters that Moses was. And the story starts in 1964 for Moses when he was born to his parents Sophie and Simon Sithole. Now, Simon was from Zimbabwe, but he was living in South Africa, and he married Sophie, who was from KwaZulu-Natal, and they lived in the township of Vosloo-Rus, which is today part of Gauteng. In the pre-apartheid government, it was called Transvaal. Now, they lived a very impoverished life and they had 5 children. Moses had an older brother called Patrick. Sophie had a child from another relationship. Together, she and Simon had 5 children. I don't know what the other sibling's gender was, but I know that he had another sister younger than him. Now, they lived in Vosloo-Rus and life wasn't easy. And it was when Moses was 5 years old that his father died unexpectedly. Now, Moses' mother was a very aggressive and violent person, according to later testimony. And she believed in the whip, and that is how she manage the children, even when Simon was alive. So when Simon would work away from home and he'll come home, it was kind of a relief for the children when their dad was there. And when he passed away, it was a very big shock in the family, for the kids especially. And Moses would later say that is when his mother became really aggressive and violent. She had immense challenges to look after physically and emotionally after these children. And it was one morning when Moses was still 5 years old that she had woken up the 5 kids. It doesn't talk about the daughter that she had with somebody else, but she had woken up Moses, Patrick, and their 3 other siblings. She had put a blanket around each one of them. It was still dark. They went out of the house and they started walking. Now, keep in mind, these kids dare not ask, where are we going? I'm tired. Are we there yet? It's not like today. Those kids just walked behind their mother. They were told to keep quiet. It was early morning. It was dark. And they finally arrived at what they later learned was the Vosloorus police station. The mother bundled them up together, put them in a corner of the parking lot, and told them that you will wait here until somebody comes and talk to you. And she put the living fear into these kids that they are not allowed to say who their parents are. They're not allowed to say where they come from, where they live, what their address is, because Patrick would have been able to do that at that age. But they had to wait there until a police officer came and asked them. Sophie left, she walked away. The children never saw their mother again. So you can just imagine the fear that those poor kids had to go through. And eventually during the day, I don't know if the police went like, what are those 5 kids doing out there? But somebody approached the children and they were put in a children's home in Benoni. Now the Sithole children were in the Benoni children's home for just a little while when they were then later transferred to a children's home in KwaZulu-Natal. And during this time, I'm not sure how many years had passed, Patrick was old enough to return to Vosloorus. He bought a home, he made a living for himself, he had a good job. And again, sources have different accounts on this, but somewhere along the line, Moses ran away from the children's home in KZN. Now, those 2 provinces are very far apart, and there's no way that he had done this on foot, so he would have had to take a taxi, a bus, a train, or something. So I get the idea that Moses was already very street smart at this stage. Moses would later on testify that they suffered severe mistreatment in their schools, while specialists would say that the school in KwaZulu-Natal was one of the best in South Africa. But according to Moses, him and his siblings had suffered a lot of abuse while there. When Moses arrived at Patrick's doorstep, Patrick welcomed him with open arms. He allowed him to stay with him, and he even helped him to look around for jobs. Now, Moses didn't really want to finish school. He never finished school, as far as I could have gathered. But he would work at the mines, he would work on the farms, he would do gardening, he would do these kind of works. But Patrick realized that Moses was always very well dressed. He dressed better than what his budget allowed. He was always dressed to the T, and people would comment on that. And the image that he portrayed in Vosloorus, even though he was a mine worker or a gardener, he would portray the image of, I'm a businessman, I have these business ventures and I'm making a lot of money. And that is how people perceived him to be. At some stage, also not sure when and how old Moses was at this time, Patrick, I don't know if he accepted a job in Limpopo. In those days it was called Venda. It was a country on its own. It's still called Venda today, but it's part of a province in South Africa. And Patrick relocated to Venda, but he allowed Moses to stay in his home. What did Moses do? Moses went behind Patrick's back and sold this house that did not belong to him. And it's not said what Patrick's response was, but in court this was testified to show that this was Moses's first real grown-up crime when he committed fraud by selling a house that doesn't belong to him. During this time period of Moses's life, when he stayed in Patrick's home and sold the home, the money that he made from the house was enough for him to actually elevate his image. And he took a kindness to street children. He would actually even return runaway kids to their parents. He'll help the parents look for missing children. And he had quite a good reputation in the neighborhood. As I said in the introduction, the girls really loved him. He was seen as quite the ladies' man, but he could never really find true love or settle down. It was always very short kind of relationships. Some of those women testified later and said that there was just something that bothered them about Moses. The idea I get of Moses is that he felt strongly that the world owed him something. The world had taken a parent from him. The world had dealt him bad cards in the mother that he was given. He was left in a parking lot. He was abused in the children's home. And now it was his turn to take what he felt he deserved. The first recorded instance of this was with Buiswa Doris Swakamisa, and that was in 1989. He met Doris, and she was a sister of a girlfriend of his, and he wanted to have intimate relations with Doris. She didn't want to, and he decided that he's going to take it from her. Now, it wasn't a, oops, I said no, let's just forget about it type of incident. Because that is a lot of times how these things are portrayed. This was a savage, brutal sexual assault against Doris. And she reported Moses to the police. What is so shocking that was heard at the court case for this sexual assault. When they arrested Moses for this sexual assault, they somehow picked up Doris as well. And they put the two of them together in the back seat of a police car. And it was here Moses was handcuffed, but he was sitting next to her, the man that had raped her. And he said to her, I should have killed you. Now, Doris remembered this, and she also testified to that in court. And he was found guilty of this assault, and he was sent to jail for a certain amount of time. Now, this reminds me a lot about Sifiso Mkwanazi, who was at 18 years old accused of rape. Then he was in jail for, I think it was 9 months, and when he came out, he started his killing spree. Now, Moses was found guilty, and he was also sentenced to jail. But when he was in jail, the wardens loved him. He had the most beautiful manners, and he was always well groomed. He did everything they wanted. And you know what? He got early release for being a model prisoner. Now, just to sum up, Moses only served 3 years of his prison sentence for the vicious attack on Doris. But something also significant happened while he was in jail and being this model prisoner. And I'm saying this without any judgment on the person I'm going to talk about now. But ladies and gents, if you visit somebody in jail, that is not a good place to meet your future husband or wife. Because this is what happened with Martha. Now, Martha went to visit her brother in jail. And it was while she was visiting her brother that this very handsome young man started making little chats with her. He complimented her and he started writing letters to her. Now, Martha came from a deeply religious family, and she believed in forgiveness, she believed in giving people chances, and she fell in love with Moses. I don't know if she knew what Moses did, but when Moses was released after the 3 years in jail, he moved in with Martha at her parents' house. Now, apparently the father wasn't very happy about this, but I think it was a case of, I don't want to lose my daughter, and I will therefore stick up with the boyfriend. So please, don't meet your future husband in jail. It's not the right place. That is a red flag galore. We know for sure that in July of 1994, Martha was 4 months pregnant with her and Moses' daughter. It was also in July 1994 that Moses had lured the 18-year-old Maria Munama to a field in Cleveland, Johannesburg. Now, Cleveland is in the Doornfontein area, and it was actually called after the Cleveland, Ohio in America, and it was established in 1903. Now, Moses didn't live near Cleveland. He actually traveled with the train there that day, got off the train, and he was scouting for a victim. When he saw Maria Munama looking around, she was also getting off the train. She was looking around, and you could most probably see the innocence in her face. He approached her and he told her that he is a businessman and he helps people to get work in the area in Cleveland, and he can help her. And he's actually the CEO of a company called Youth Against Human Abuse. Now, that was the company's name. And Maria was so happy that this kind man was helping her. So he explained to her that we just need to walk over to that part of the veld or a field, open bushland. And on the other side, my offices are, and there we can just do all the checks. I'll do the interview, and you will have a job, because I can see that you are nicely dressed, you are well spoken. Whatever he told her, she believed him, because she accompanied him across this field that they had to walk. Somewhere along the line, where there was a tree, he overpowered her, he sexually assaulted her, and he strangled her. But what he also did, and that is what the police found very strange, was that he took a regular ballpoint pen and he carved words into her skin. The 3 things that he carved into her skin, he had written, "She's a beach," as in B-E-A-C-H, and he probably meant B-I-T-C-H. He carved into her stomach, I'm not sure which went where, but he carved into her stomach some of these words, but he said, "I'm no fighting with you, please." And he also carved somewhere on her body, "We must stay here for as long as you don't understand." Now, Moses had the same process for all of his victims, and this was the first known murder that he had committed. 1994 was supposed to be a year of renewal and new promise and freedom for most of the population in South Africa. It was supposed to be new opportunities, the playing field was leveled, and people living in impoverished neighborhoods had the opportunity to excel in life. Unfortunately, by the last half of this year of 1994, the bodies started piling up. I want to read to you how many they had found by this time, and they could all allocate them to one criminal. So by the end of the year, they say that 4 women were found strangled in Cleveland. A 5th was found in Atteridgeville in Pretoria, and that was close to where Moses had lived. A 6th was found in Boksburg. The murders went into the new year, into 1995, and the police actually started reporting on it to the media as the ABC killer, A as in Atteridgeville, B as in Boksburg, and C as in Cleveland. Because they could realize, even though if you plot these areas, it doesn't make sense to do it together, but it would be accessible by public transport. One of these victims was, now Moses had a wife that he was traditionally married to, but one of these women that ended up dead was Amanda Tete, who was his girlfriend. And he very graciously attended her funeral. He stood close to the casket. It's just so heart-wrenching to think that he was at her funeral. Now, there was a little bit of a twist in Amanda's murder investigation when they found on CCTV that another person that Amanda knew, David Selepe, was caught withdrawing money with her bank card. Now, allegedly, he confessed to murdering her, and on the way to show the police where her body was, I don't know if he tried to escape and then he was shot, but this man was killed. Later on, David was linked to other serial murders. It could not have been anybody else because his DNA actually was found at these scenes. So that was just a twist in the tale, but it is believed that Moses definitely killed Amanda. Moses and Martha's daughter was born in December 1994, and he really, by all accounts, loved this little girl of his. And it is said that he would not stop talking about this little girl, and that for a while, to keep up the appearances, he seemed like the devoted father, and he wanted to give her the life that he never had. Now, I don't know if I want to say fortunately or unfortunately, but fortunately for Martha and this child, I would say, she split from Moses very soon after the birth of the little girl, but unfortunately, this increased the body count of Moses Sithole. At this stage, the police was still thinking that the murders of the Cleveland killer was David Selepe, and they still didn't have a suspect for the Atteridgeville and Boksburg killers. The bodies started piling up, and it was always in those areas close to a railway station. Now, after Moses was kicked out of the house, I assume by Martha's dad, he slept at train stations. He was homeless, but still kept up appearances. It would still be the ruse of, he would call himself a labor broker, which was big in those days. And he would say to people, I've got a perfect job for you. You look like a receptionist, or you will be great at this. And unfortunately, the woman fell at his feet. The very respected and amazing Dr. Mickey Pistorius was South Africa's very first, as I understand, profiler, and she was asked by the police to come in and do a profile on the Atteridgeville and Boksburg killer and also on the Cleveland killer. Now, she firmly believed that it could be two killers that are doing these murders. She got training directly from the FBI, and the FBI even supported her profile. They said that her profile was so specific on this man that she said that he is going to call the police or the media very soon. So now we have an area in utter fear because the bodies are piling up. They are saying that there are two killers and people should be wary who they walk with, don't accept rides from strangers. So they were trying to cover all these scenarios, and it was then on the 16th of September of 1995 at the Van Dyke Mines in Boksburg that a terrible, I am getting goosebumps as I am telling you this, a terrible find took place. The bodies of several women in different stages of decomposition was found as if it was a slaughterhouse. It was shocking. You can see on the footage that they had from the news that the policemen had never seen something like this. Their faces were expressionless. It was as if they were defeated. When the police started gathering evidence, they found 10 bodies in 48 hours. It made such an impact on the leadership of our country that even the president, Nelson Mandela, went onto the evening news and made a request to say, if you know anything, if you had seen anything, if you are the murderer, please come forward. And I don't think this has ever happened in my lifetime in South Africa. And it was also during this time that a man had seen a young gentleman going into the veld with a young female, and he felt like something was not right, and when he followed them, he actually just came upon a dead body. So he didn't see enough of the man, but the police then knew that definitely the guy is still there and he is still killing. So just as Dr. Mickey Pistorius had predicted, on the 3rd of October 1995, Moses Sithole called the Star newspaper. He said that his name was Joseph Mangena and that he is the man that is so feverishly sought by the police. He claimed responsibility for all the Atteridgeville and Boksburg murders, but he said that he had nothing to do with the Cleveland murders. And Moses was intelligent. He knew that they were looking at David Selepe for the Cleveland murders. So he said also that he was not responsible for a murder that was so heinous that I can imagine that even he would have not said that he had done this, because it was a mother that was murdered with her 2-year-old son, and their names I want to read to you. It was Sibusiso Ndlangamandla. He was 2 years old, and Moses had beaten him to death and killed his mother the same way that he had killed all the other women. He spoke at length with this journalist, and he told her that he's killing women because one, and now he's referring to Doris, had falsely accused him of rape, and that is why he went to jail and his whole life was ruined. I think it was longer than an hour that they spoke over the phone, But he also told her some clues that the police had not yet discovered, or information that the police did not make known to the public. And he said to her that he is planning to hand himself over. It was a female journalist. I think that's important to know because that's going to come up later again. And she urged him, she said to him, please, Joseph, what he said his name was, give yourself up. As she was talking and she was asking him where he was, he told her, but he definitely sensed that she was relaying the information because the police were on their way, but when they arrived, he was already gone from the payphone. The police didn't just sit backwards and wait for Moses to call them. They did very intensive research, and they found out that a lot of the women that were victims had called a lady the day before they died, the same lady. And this was one of Moses' sisters. That was a tick box. Okay, so they all called this one person. And two of the women who had died had an application form working for Youth Against Human Abuse, the company which Moses said he was the CEO of, with his name on the application form. Most of these women had told their families that today I met somebody at the train station. He gave me his number. He gave me a form. I'm going to see him for work today. Most of them had an appointment to see this gentleman that was described as the guy who will get them a job. Now, when they checked the information of what Joseph had given the journalist, they found that most of these facts had checked out for being Moses Sithole. And that is when they could really with certainty say that Moses Sithole was a wanted man. And that is when they published his picture. Now, as I said, I was really shocked. I was still a child at that stage, but I loved reading the news, reading newspapers, and I just thought this looks like a normal person. How can we tell? How can we know that this person killed so many people? So the hunt was on. And Moses knew it because his face was on every newspaper and on the news every night. He approached his sister's husband and asked if he can get a firearm. Now the brother-in-law said, sure, you can borrow my firearm, come to my work tomorrow, I'll have it at work. And the brother-in-law actually called the police immediately. Now, I have to say, this is such an amazing way that they captured him. I really love this. I think the police did amazing work. So the brother-in-law calls the police. He works at some factory kind of place. And the police puts an undercover police person at the security of this company. The security guards working at the company doesn't know. The other people are told that this is his first day, show him the ropes, he's going to work here. His name was Francis Muluvetsi. Now, Francis, if you are watching this, sir, you are amazing. Now, Francis was standing guard as if he's the security guard now. Sometime Moses arrived. Moses said that he's there to see his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law works here. It sounded like the other security guards already knew Moses or they had seen him before. So these guys tell the new guy, you go and find the brother-in-law. Francis refuses. He says, there's no way, I'm leaving my post. I was assigned to stand here. In Francis's mind, he didn't want to take his eyes off Moses Sithole because he knew that this is the man that viciously and savagely killed these women. A verbal altercation starts between the security guards, and this Francis just says, I'm not going to go. I'm staying here. You go and look for this guy. And Moses sensed that something is going on. And he started running. And Francis started running after him. Now, Moses ran into an alleyway, and I don't know where he managed to hide an axe, but he attacked Francis with an axe. And that is when Francis took out his firearm and he shot Moses to disarm him and to protect himself. Now, well done, Francis. I'm very proud of you, sir. You are the kind of policeman we need in the police. So poor Moses, he was very seriously injured. He was taken to a hospital. They saved his life because they wanted answers. Obviously, they wanted to know if there are more people. I mean, it was a big, big event in South Africa. He was transferred to a military hospital where the protection was better, because he was first taken to the closest hospital. And at the military hospital, he was under 24-hour guard. And when he was able to talk, he refused to talk to the police. I'm not sure whether he asked for a female police person or whether the police said, would you like to talk to a lady? It so happened that he refused to talk to the men. And when a female police officer went into the room, he started telling the story from the very beginning, where his mother abused him until that day. And the disgusting part is that he masturbated while telling this police officer, and he was having the best time of his life relaying all of this horrible information to this female police officer. Another interesting event that happened is that when he recovered from his gunshots, he complained about the gunshots every day. He told the police that if you didn't shoot me, I could have been in court already, and everything was due to the shooting. He felt very sorry for himself. So now that he confessed to some of the murders, he also didn't confess to everything at once. It was in sessions that he confessed. He then started taking them to sites where the crimes were committed, and he would really toy with the police. So he would say, right, today we can go to, let's say, Cleveland. And on their way to Cleveland, he would say, oh no, my gunshot wounds are so painful. I can't go anymore. And on one of those days that he did that again, and the detective, I don't know what his name is, but I read this, he was so fed up with this man that he told the driver to stop at a pharmacy. So he went into the pharmacy and he actually bought what we call here in South Africa Smarties. Now, Smarties is a chocolate candy. The detective then in the pharmacy separated the colors and just took one color. I'm not sure which one. I would think maybe the red ones. And he went back to the car and he said to Moses, open your mouth. Don't chew this. It's disgusting if you chew this. Swallow it. It's very strong pain medication. You will not have pain for the day. And Moses did what the detectives told him, and he didn't have pain again the rest of the day. So wouldn't you know, Smarties actually helps for pain relief. Moses had a few extra calls with the journalist from the Star. He told her a few very explosive things, and he actually said to her at one stage that the body count is actually 76 people and not the amount that the police know about, but they could never really pinpoint or put him as the culprit to so many murders. He also told one investigator when they asked him, why did you do it? And he said, I'm hurt, so now I'm doing it. And that was his answer of why he had done it. In the span of 1 year, of July 1994 and November 1995, Moses had killed 37 women and 1 baby. One of those victims was very tragically and sadly the receptionist of the Teddy Bear Clinic. Now, that was a non-profit organization that wanted to partner with Moses and help him with his Youth Against Human Abuse company. But unfortunately, this lady, it was testified that she had somewhat of a crush on him and that she left work with him one day and just never returned. Her body was also found as one of those 37 victims of his. Moses was at that stage charged with 29 murders, many counts of rape, many counts of theft because he took some of their belongings. The 29 at that stage was because they could only physically link him to 29, and he was sent to the Boksburg prison where everything started for him. Now, in all the pre-prison examinations, they found out that he had TB and he also had HIV. And very sadly, his wife and daughter had that as well. Now, what was an outrage was that Moses had now the right and the privilege to get free medication for TB and HIV in jail, while his wife and daughter could not get that medication, and they subsequently died of complications to the illness. So he was very well taken care of in jail, and it was while he was in jail that he came up with this brilliant plan. Him and 2 other inmates, they somehow got a video camera. He decided that he is going to make a video and tell the world about his crimes, and he's going to sell that video for a lot of money that he is going to make sure his daughter will get. So that video is actually extremely disgusting because he sits there in his jail cell with these guys. They are switching between Afrikaans and English, and they are laughing, and he is very blatantly relaying these crimes that he had done. Moses' trial started in October of 1996, and it was presided over by Justice David Curl-Lewis. The prosecution was State Advocate Jovial Rantau, who approached the case in a chronological order. He managed to get the earlier woman that Moses had sexually assaulted and was never charged for. He managed to get Doris to come and testify, and Doris told them how he had, in the back of a police car, told her that I should have killed you. The state then at the end, as the investigation went on, managed to then charge him with 38 counts of murder, 40 counts of rape, and 6 counts of robbery. What Moses wasn't counting on when he had this brilliant idea of the confession videotape was that the prosecution would get their hands on it. Now, obviously, Moses' defense fought tooth and nail not to get that tape released in court, and that caused a trial within a trial, and Justice Curl-Lewis actually took some time, went through all the legalities, and when he came back, the trial resumed in 1997. He said, for sure, let's look at that video, obviously in more legal terms. I can only imagine what that court heard and the silence in the court, because Moses went on to demonstrate to the camera how he strangled the woman. He was asked by this guy that made the video, how did you choose your victim? Because remember, this is a criminal as well. He's in jail for a reason also. And Moses' answer was, because they reminded me of Doris. And Doris was the reason why I went to jail in the first place. So that was the final nail in Moses' coffin. And the evidence just mounted up against him. In total, the state had more than 100 witnesses. They had, as I said earlier, mountains of evidence, and they rested on August 1997, and then it was the defense time. The defense did themselves no favors because they put Mr. Moses Sithole on the stand, and he rambled on and on and on about how terrible life has been for him. He could not explain how it is that his name was found on paper on an application form with so many women. He could not explain why these women were testified to be with him. He couldn't explain anything. He had these airy-fairy, everyone is against me kind of feedback. On December the 4th, 1997, Justice Carl Lewis had a lengthy verdict for Mr. Moses Sithole. He was found guilty on each one of the charges, and Justice Carl Lewis went through each charge, each piece of evidence that linked him to the crimes, and the families of the victims were elated. December the 4th, he was found guilty, and on December the 5th, the judgment came. In South Africa's year of renewal, which was 1994, we also had a lot of legislation change, and in 1995, the year that Moses was still killing, South Africa had abolished the death penalty. But Judge Carl Lewis did not mince his words, and he said that if ever somebody deserved to get the death penalty, it was Moses Sithole. However, he could not punish him and sentence him to death, so he instead sentenced him as follows. Moses Sithole was given an accumulative sentence of 2,410 years in prison. This was calculated as follows. He was given 50 years for each murder count, 12 years for each rape, and 5 years for each robbery. And this would run consecutively and not concurrently. Moses would not be eligible for parole for at least the next, in that year, 930 years. So effectively, Moses Sithole would not walk the streets again as a free man. Now, these years are largely symbolic because we all know and thank God that Moses Sithole would not become 930 years old. But it was the harshest sentence ever given in South African history. Moses Sithole was 33 years old when he was sentenced. Moses Sithole was first kept at the C-Max prison, which is South Africa's highest security prison. He was kept in isolation because I'm sure he would have had a horrible time if he was let loose under the general population in jail. But later on he was moved to the Bloemfontein Correctional Facility, Mongaung. and where he is according to resources until today, and he is 64 or 67 today. Dr. Mickey Pistorius, who was responsible for profiling Moses and walking the road with this case, had coined him as a psychological torturer, because it came out that he not only violated his victims' bodies, his victims' lives, but he also would torture their loved ones emotionally. He would find out what their telephone numbers were, and he would call the homes of those people while the person was still missing, before the bodies were found. He would do whatever to cause immense emotional trauma to the family members. Dr. Pistorius had also said that his mother and the way that she treated him, the neglect, the abandonment, was, in terms of Moses, a cause of his resentment towards women. So it's not to say that everybody in his family or siblings would be the same. It's just that he harbored immense resentment towards women, and then the Doris incident would also just pile up on what he thought of women.
You offer your money? No. But you didn't want sex from them, you just wanted them?
No, I didn't go for, I was not in a holiday. I was crossed, I was hurt, I was aggressive.
Strangle or beat them?
No, I didn't beat anybody.
Just strangle?
Yeah.
How long does it take for somebody to die if you strangle them?
Few minutes.
Is it?
Yeah, no, 5 minutes is too much. If he's writing on the spot, and then the decision, the final decision, here, she must die. She can see it. I should die, then she can see it. And she cannot help. Nothing will help her.
Moses Sithole was a remorseless, psychopathic predator. He made people trust him. He pretended to be a friend, a helper, a changer of futures, but he was just a monster. The names you see on your screen now are the victims that could have been linked to him in court, that he was found guilty of murdering or ending their lives, and my heart goes out to all of their loved ones, family members, friends. And I know that putting someone away in jail may not bring you your child, your sister, your friend back, but I think 2,410 years can bring the community some peace to know that another monster has been taken off the street. Thank you for watching this episode of Suspicious Minds. I really appreciate your support. I appreciate your comments. Tell me what you think about Moses. Keep it civil. If you have any cases, I have quite a number of cases coming up with all of your suggestions. Thank you to the TikTok community who loves the bite-sized videos. Thank you to my YouTube community. I really appreciate you. Thank you for subscribing, sharing, commenting, and I really hope to bring you a lot more videos in future. Stay safe, stay suspicious, and don't find your future husband or wife when visiting someone in jail. That's not the right place. Bye.